It's really the most difficult thing I really ever had to do, to be honest. Number one, the makeup on his face is extra difficult. It's very challenging to do. And they shot it in broad daylight, which is the harshest, most insane way to do a prosthetic. Now you have to blend all that to a body who is 3 times the size of Colin. He got scars on his body and all these things. And then we had done all this hair punching and all this whole body's covered in hair. And, Colin has no hair. It's like it all had to be built in a position that they were going to film him in. So we had engineered how that was going to be done the entire time in the studio, trying to figure out how to do this, and how to pull it off. What's up, dudes?
Mike, how you doing, man?
What's going on?
We are
look at you handsome fellows over there.
You stop.
What's happening over there?
Mike, just a small refresher. I'm Daniel. This is Anthony. We're so grateful to be talking with you again, man. It's been too long.
Oh man, I know who you guys are. I'm a geek too.
Man, where do we begin? I think the thing that's been made us so happy with the Penguin releasing, other than it being a friggin' amazing show, is that you've been doing so much press with Colin, and I've never seen that. We've never seen that happen before. So how did that start? Like, was Colin like, listen, I need you there with me to go on the tour for OzCobb?
Colin is a rebel, a real rebel actor. He's an artist. He's a very perceptive and rebellious, like a pirate, a little bit on kind of like how I've navigated over the years. I'm kind of a little bit of like a little bit of a rebel. I grew up in New York as a younger brother to a guy, my brother Jimmy, who used to work for the Ramones, and I grew up in like a punk rock like environment. I knew the Ramones when I was like fucking 12 and shit. Like my brother would sneak out of the house and go see the Ramones, and it was always like my whole upbringing was punk rock, movies, comic books, and just being kind of a rebel. Colin is a little bit like that too, a little bit like me, a little bit rebellious, a little bit like F you, this is what it should be like, that kind of thing. So I think with the press, with Penguin and everything, I think Colin wanted to do what he wanted. And I think that he appreciated what I had brought to the table. I mean, these are his words. These are not mine. I mean, he's saying that on the movie, it was so unexpected to what I had done, makeup wise, that if it wasn't for me, there wouldn't be a Penguin show at all. It just wouldn't be. It grew out of like my fascination of what I thought would be cool. It wasn't, because Matt Reeves he's an amazing artist as well. And Matt Reeves was really kind of like, hey, we should do something with Colin. I don't really know what. Maybe we could just make him a little heavier or something. Okay. And I just kind of did what I wanted. I did what I thought it should be. Took all those notes, but I did what I thought. And I think it was an unexpected version of what, it became. It was like, oh shit, wait, this is Colin. And then it was like, oh, this was more than I thought it would be, but I love it, So it just became like my being a fan and understanding the character, understanding the script, and kind of like, how can I make him look like a crazy, mafia gangster, And that was the thing too. Even though OzCobb, no one really knows what he is, but like if you're dealing with like Italian mafia families like Falcone and, Maronis and stuff, like they don't really take non-Italians or whatever. So I'm like, okay, if I make him look like this Irish gangster or something, because he's Irish, it's not going to feel right, So I kind of made him look Italian, a bit. And I think, whether his name is that or it's shortened or whatever the hell it is, if you watch Scorsese's movie, The Irishman, that's a perfect example. It's like, it's called out that he's the Irish guy, but he's working with the Italian mob and they love him, and that kind of thing. And it's like a rarer thing, even in Goodfellas, he's part Irish or whatever, and they won't fully accept him, kind of thing. So I was thinking like, okay, he's working for the Falcons. If this is even real in any way, it's going to kind of look Italian. So that was my idea on making him look a certain way. What I felt right, what I felt was right for the character, and the press thing was like, and I think it just grew from Colin's need to be transformed, and I think that he's been crediting me anyway as like, okay, this is like a 50-50 thing. If it wasn't for Mike and this crazy idea, we wouldn't have the show. And his acting is so amazing that almost kind of liberated him in a way to where he just didn't have to be Colin. He just didn't have to look like himself, didn't have to be him. He didn't have to rely on his charm, looks, or charisma. It was just like blank slate. Like, this is pure acting skill. So I think that he really appreciated what I had brought to the table there in a rebellious way, because like, a lot of the time you talk to a director, you talk to a producer, they box you in, like, this is what we want you to do, and it has to be within this realm. So the Penguin wasn't overly designed. This thing was my original sculpture, my original idea. I didn't make changes. So it was just like, boom, inspiration, boom, on camera. And that's what it was. And I think that the purity of idea and that purity of what this was, human beings recognize that kind of thing, so some in subconscious something, I mean, that energy put into it really became what it is now.
It's so funny seeing when you're watching like the behind the scenes of the Batman, and you see Colin wearing it, and he just starts like doing the voices like, I'm gonna send you an email, like I'm gonna bring it to I'm gonna deliver, like him just like starting to figure out who this character is. It's like those little things, like it's just the power of what looking different was able to do for him, right?
Yeah, that was my video that I took in the Warner Brothers studio. We were just goofing around. I was like, dude, let's get this, let's make up some shit. I was like kind of pushing him and asking him questions and like kind of intimidating him. And he was just like, because I had done that with Eddie Murphy too. And Rick Baker had done that with Eddie Murphy. Like when you put like him in a makeup and then he would start asking questions and then the voice comes out and then the character comes out. It's very similar to what Colin did. It was like, he's being provoked. And then since he's my friend, we were having fun with it, and he felt comfortable with me, so he just kind of started doing all this stuff. And his son was there, and it was like his son loved it, and they thought it was so freaky and cool, and we just were having a ball. I mean, it was just like so fun to be able to do that. And there are a lot of people that are like, why don't you just hire a guy that looks like him? Why don't you hire? It's just like, are those people like as good of an actor? This is theater. It's theater. Then why do any makeup ever? Why make why cast any actor to look like Ben Franklin or something? Find someone that looks like Ben Franklin. It's just so cheesy of an excuse for that. It's like, okay, well, this is theater. It's theater. It just happens to be on TV, happens to be here. Colin is an exceptional actor, an incredibly skilled actor. And I think to be this character, he really needed to not be himself.
Your version of the Penguin, like I've read a lot of Batman comic books. I've never seen the Penguin like your version. And it's so unique and refreshing and grounded because, like I've seen people cosplay as the Penguin and it just stands out where, your version and Colin and Matt's version creating this gangster, John Gotti, like nothing can touch him, like Teflon Don. And it just like, yeah, I know that guy. I might have grew up with someone who knew this guy. And that's the beauty of like this Penguin. It's just, it feels so real.
Cool. I mean, I basically, I grew up in New York and I've been in New York City my whole life. And I, outside of New York as well, like my family and, uncles and things like that. Like there's some characters out there,
Definitely.
there are some real characters out there. And I had done a film with John Travolta, when I had done a makeup on John as John Gotti, like when he gets all like scarred up and his face is all fucked up and skin grafted and stuff. But at the premiere of that movie, there was an after party where like all these real gangsters, like the whole Gotti family, like crazy amount of mob people were there. And it was scary, man. You know, there were like 1,000 penguins, you know, and it was like, should we stay at this party? And, John was like, maybe you guys should just go hang out somewhere else, like,
When it comes to like doing a movie and now a TV series, what are your biggest challenges when it comes to building the look for the Penguin on a 2 hour film compared to like a 10 hour film if you take each episode and really focus on Colin's character?
I look at it all as the same. It's basically instead of a 2 hour movie with, 10, 15 minutes where he's in, it's an 8 hour movie with, 6 hours of him in it, so it doesn't really change for me. It's harder.
Yeah.
It's more difficult because they're on a tighter timeline. They're on a tighter budget. I'm on a higher timeline, a higher budget. It's harder when you have to do things fast. It's harder when you have less of a budget and all that stuff. I mean, it's more difficult, and they're filming and showing him so much more.
Yeah.
So it's like really exponentially more difficult for us and my whole team, and it's not just me. It's many other people. It's all my people in my studio. It's other artists every day in my studio working and getting him ready and all that. I'm just, like a director in my own world, like kind of orchestrating the whole thing. I happen to be also doing the sculpting and doing the makeup and all that stuff too. But it's a real big team effort of many skilled people, and it's an orchestration, it's a real challenge.
It's fascinating seeing, in that first episode, especially because we're seeing him so much more during the day. Like there's things like so much more that has to be held under more, I guess, scrutiny to make him feel like a more believable person. But let me tell you, I think the moment that like we already were sold, but when you saw the interrogation scene and you're seeing like his full body, and and even Colin was saying like he had like like a penguin like penis and like things like that too. Like it's just wild to think that like I'm like this is a different person. And we spoke to Kristen Milotti a few weeks ago, and she was saying how like when she was touching his skin, like it felt like just like real skin. So I just we'd love to know like that interrogation scene. What was that like putting that together and like building the whole body of this person to actually be seen?
That was really the most difficult thing I really ever had to do, to be honest, because number one, the makeup on his face is extra difficult. It's very challenging to do, and on top of it, now you have to blend all that to a body who is 3 times the size of Colin. Because Colin is very lean. He's like, the guy's an athlete, the dude's like a runner and, runs marathons and stuff, like he doesn't look anything like that. He's super lean, so he's 3 times the size. Got scars on his body and all these things. And then we had done all this hair punching and all this whole body's covered in hair. And, Colin has no hair, it's like his whole body is a prosthetic, the entire from head to feet to toes. I mean, even in the nude scene, he's wearing his foot that we had built as well, which is all mangled and club foot and all that. And he's wearing the whole thing. He's tied to a chair. I had to engineer how we were even going to build that because prosthetics don't really exactly move 100% like skin.
Right.
There, it's like maybe 75% like skin, but then you have certain areas that are not bound by tendons and stuff, like where you bend an arm, it might buckle it like a piece of fabric or something, where it's not exactly 100% like skin. So designing that all, I was like, okay, I need to know exactly how he's sitting. How are we sitting? So it had to be built sitting. His arms had to be, okay, are they behind his back? Are they in the front? Like it all had to be built in a position that they were going to film him in, because he couldn't stand up and do all this stuff and then sit down. It would be like,
right.
Things are restricted by how it is. I mean, how you build it. So we had engineered how that was going to be done. And they shot it in broad daylight, which is the harshest, most insane way to do a prosthetic because take for instance like Greg Fraser's lighting. It's all like beautifully shot in the dark, have all these, amazing elements to it and layers and cloudiness and, all this stuff going on. And it's like the beautiful paintings. But this, you're in a day in a greenhouse. He's number one sweating. It's hot in there. It's like summer or wherever the hell we filmed it. It was like super hot. He's totally encased in prosthetics head to toe, and it's shot in broad daylight. So we were all having like mini heart attacks the whole entire time. It was just like an extremely stressful build. And we had to actually push that because they put that at the very beginning of the schedule. I was like, there's no way we can do this. I'm like, we haven't even figured it out yet, so, but they were very accommodating and like, okay, let's try to move the location here. I mean, they really trusted us. So they really, the UPM, the producers really trusted that we knew what we were doing and the reasons why. It wasn't just because we were goofing off. We were really the entire time in the studio trying to figure out how to do this, and how to pull it off.
With Colin, was there like a biggest piece of feedback that he gave from working on the Batman to working on the series where it's just like, listen, is there a way that we can make this faster or make this more comfortable? Like, I'm just curious, like, what was the evolution like from the film side of it to the TV side of it?
On the movie, we had a good test run. So I understood what was technically if there was an issue or something like that. But actually on the film, we got the makeup down to very, very short time. It was only like an hour. I think the best day was like an hour and 17 minutes to get him in the makeup, which was crazy.
Wow.
So when the series came around, he was like, I'm not shaving my head. And I was like, you fucker, because on the movie, he shaved his head. He shaved all this off. So he looked like in St. Francis, he had a monk hairdo. And that was only supposed to be a few months. Because I had done a movie with Philip Seymour Hoffman called Synecdoche, New York, where we had convinced Philip Seymour Hoffman, he was like, fuck it, I'm shaving my head. Because if I'm wearing all these wigs and stuff, fuck it, I'll do it. And I was like, all right. So I told Colin, I'm like, Philip Seymour Hoffman shaved his head. I think you should shave his head. It'll save time in the makeup chair. He's like, fuck it, I'll do it too. So we shave his head, very thick hairline, shave all of this. And I said, we'll make like almost like a toupee that'll comb into your hair. Okay, cool. So on the series, he's like, I'm not going to shave my head. So I'm like, that's going to take more time in the makeup chair. And he's like, I don't care. Let's see if we can make it work. He's like, that was really hard for me to be like shaving my head. And it wasn't even like he shaved his head. It was like shaving part of his head. So it was just like he couldn't go out anywhere. He looked very interesting, Stanley Tucci vibe, but like he rocking that look, but like Colin Farrell, it's just puffy hair and nothing here, so he wasn't having it. So it took an extra hour in the chair. So we really got the makeup down to like 2 hours, 30 minutes and under. There were days where it was like 10 minutes faster, 5 minutes faster, but it took longer, which was even more of a challenge because he's got such a thick head of hair. We had to literally glue and tape and paste his hair down entirely, cover it with like 3 layers of things. A bald cap and then another prosthetic that went over it. And then we begin the makeup where we started on the film. Then we glue the cheeks on and the neck and the nose and all that stuff. So it was like an additional hour. And it was throughout the day, problems that you're experiencing that you never had on the film. Like bubbles are coming up and, sweating because it's a heavy sweat area. So it's like, it's a hole or a bubble would appear or like some wrinkle would be weird or something. It was like a nightmare, really. So it's like the filming the series was fucking hard. It was not easy.
Does it ever hurt or do these actors go through tremendous amounts of like uncomfortability when it comes to putting all these things on and just staying there and waiting for a shot to be, and then at the end of the night taking it off? And like, what do they feel like when all that comes off?
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Well, it takes a very special person to do this because if you're cranky and you don't want to deal with stuff, it's not for you. It's not for you. This is, I have to say, Colin Farrell is a rarity He is so dedicated to his art. He's so dedicated to doing this. He's hardcore, like I'm hardcore. Like I sculpted the original version of this like on Christmas, like New Year's. I was like, I had to get it done, and I had this idea, and I worked through that time period, and not many people are willing to do things like that, and I would have remade it, and you know, there's many things I've done over the years. So it's like that's hardcore, like I never skimp, I never take the cheap way, I always do it right, so he's that way as an actor, and I would say we had a strike during our filming. We had a 5-month actors writer strike and all that stuff, and that sucked. But the only good thing that came out of it was that it gave him a break
Yeah.
of wearing it. So it was almost like two pieces. It was almost like two movies. You filmed this movie for, 5 months or whatever, 4 months, and then you had a 5-month break, and then we're back in it again. Same thing. So it was like, okay, that was like a saving grace because you have an 8-hour movie here, that you have the main character in close-ups, in makeup, like totally, it's not a scratch. It's not a wound or something. It is a hardcore full character process. I don't think it's ever really been done in this capacity. I mean, the only thing I really can think of is like Nutty Professor or something, but you still kind of know it's Eddie Murphy. This dude's totally gone. He's like got, everything, eyelids and eyebrows and new eyebrows and new hairline and just new ears and just everything is covered, and it's in a dramatic, serious, intimidating sense. If that shit doesn't work, it's just like a massive fail on like so many thousand levels, but it really takes a special person to do it, and patience and dedication, so it's hard to do, even to, wear makeup. I don't know if you guys have ever done it on a Halloween or whatever, anything elaborate, but like at the end of the night, it's sticky and crazy and you're hot and tired. And that's every day. It's like Halloween every single day for like 100 days, it's like, a third of the year is Halloween, so it's not for everyone. You have to really be your soul embedded into this job. Hey, look, we're not heart surgeons. We're not curing diseases and things like that. So I can't be like, oh, it's the hardest thing in the world. But in my field, it's definitely probably like up there with the most difficult situation. Building it, designing it, gluing it on, wearing it, acting in it, all of it. It's not for the faint-hearted.
No, but I just, it's such a, you could tell there's so much love and effort put into every one of those scars, every like skin follicle. You see that, and something that Anthony and I were talking about, and with Shay, who's our third host, is not here. But when you're sculpting, like when you were sculpting that on Christmas, when you were sculpting that over the New Year's, were you thinking about like every scar? Like were you thinking about like every like background? Like, oh, this may have happened in his life, and how this is how someone would have gone this, and this is why he looks the way that he does now. Like what goes into the thought placement of where each individual, I guess, marking is going to go?
With the way I approach things, I can't speak for everyone, but a lot of the things that I approach, it's almost kind of like, you're playing God in a sense. You're literally playing, Dr. Frankenstein, or you're playing God, and you have to, when you're designing a character or you're designing a person. Do I want to make this phantom person that just looks like, a scary monster with horns or something? Like, I'm always thinking like, how did they get those horns? Why do they have those horns? Do they live in an environment where they're fighting someone or whatever? Like, I'm always thinking of like how something organically would grow, how something organically would be built, designed, like, because nature is very linked with the environment, and when you have the penguin, I'm like, okay, well, Matt likes all these gangsters. It's a mafia type of thing. but he's called the Penguin. And all mob guys have nicknames. They all have, crazy, Sammy the Bull Garvano, and like this person or that person. Like they all have like these nicknames. So if this guy's name's the Penguin, he's a mob guy. Okay, why do they call him the Penguin? He's got to have a walk. He's got to have some reason why that thing is a certain way. Why? What made him want? It's just not his mom, even though that's a huge influence in this show, like his mom influencing him and wanting him to be something. Number one, he's grown up in this really kind of fucked up environment. You don't know what happened to his childhood, how he was treated. He does have acne and scars, and he does have this huge scar across his face. Like, how did maybe someone slashed him? Maybe someone almost killed him. Maybe he almost died. Maybe he was robbed. You don't know. Gotham is a dangerous place. So in my head as a fan, like I understood the comics. I really understood the character and stuff. And if you go back to the comics, Penguin's like this goofy, art, scammer. He is, I guess, what you'd consider a mafia person or a gang leader or something, as if many of the villains are there in the very beginning. But I read all those comics, like I know where the origins of Penguin came from. And it's like a sneaky dude that's, looks like a penguin, but you cannot do that in this series. You can't. It just doesn't fit in the world. So my idea of designing it is like, okay, here are real gangsters with nicknames. This is what they look like. These are the attributes, like Fat Tony Salerno, which I had done the makeup for Martin Scorsese on The Irishman. I'd done that. Dominic Lombardozzi totally doesn't look like that person, and we made him look like that guy. They all have nicknames and stuff. So how do I add that nickname of Penguin into real mobster stuff? So I totally looked at birds. I all subconsciously in my head, I looked at all these features and I tried to incorporate it. And I saw scarred birds and really wounded birds and really wounded and fucked up faces with scars and bent beaks, like completely sideways and stuff. And I tried to add like silhouettes of lines and shapes and stuff in the face to where it's just like subconsciously you're thinking, if you maybe you recognize an organic shape that looks like the bird beak, maybe you do this. I'm putting all these things in and I'm trying to play God, and I'm trying to, and it can never be God. I can never be God, but in this fantasy world, I'm creating, Dr. Frankenstein or Frankenstein type of thing, where does it make sense? How can it make sense? So I always think that way. There's so much symbolism inside the face, and I think that might be what separates me from other people or designers or whatnot, but it's all my thing. It's my style. It's the way I approach something,
Yeah, you see it a lot now that you look back, and now you have like more context to it. And now when I'm going to watch the series again, I'm going to look at his face and just see those things that I associate now with what you just said, like the birds. Like I've seen damaged birds. I'm sorry, I'm not coming across damaged birds. No. I'm just saying, like now I'm like, oh yeah, it makes so much sense. It's so
much sense. Nature is brutal.
Yeah, nature's brutal. Yeah,
it's brutal, and people are cruel. People are cruel. Growing up, especially like I grew up like in the 80s. The people they're probably still cruel, but it was pretty hardcore back in the day. Like teasing kids and people getting teased and fights and. Yeah. It's pretty hardcore, So I think, Oz, and I think this is also a reflection of like the music and the piece, it's 80s, it's 70s and stuff. So like he grew up probably, we don't know what time period we're in. They have phones and stuff. He grew up probably in the 70s and 80s. So it was probably a little bit more brutal of an upbringing, especially in Gotham, which is fucking a crazy place, He probably got teased. He probably got tortured. He probably this or that, and it builds you up into being someone. And there is a switch when a person has had enough and they lose everything. That's a scary individual. Because they can go either way. They can go into a positive aspect of things where I've lost everything and I've elevated to the spiritual zone and I'm going to do something good for the world because I was treated poorly. Or the person who totally got taken advantage of, totally got fucked over, physically, violently. Okay, and then there's the other path. I'm going to fucking get rid of these bastards. I'm going to get what I should have. I'm going to get what I deserve. I'm going to take it. And I'm going to use every means possible to do it. So it's physical attributes really, really change and tell you what this person may become, you know? So it's interesting when I see people with afflictions and their attitude. They may be amazing. They may be great. And they may be like, fuck you.
Yeah.
I'm going to be a badass and I don't care. You know, so it's really, really like Oz may have been one of those people, felt mistreated because of his appearance, his physicality, tied into a bad environment, tied into bad parenting, tied into all these things. And you become a person that may want to kill people and, you know, be the way he is, you know?
Yeah. And survive in this role. And I'm just curious for you, Mike, and obviously we'll stay spoiler free, but is there an episode that you're specifically looking forward to most this season for people to seeing? Like, is there an episode number that you're like, that's the one that I'm real proud of what we did on that and what people are gonna, how Oz is gonna come off in this one?
Everyone's seen the first episode, and that has a lot of stuff in it. You know, you see his foot, you see his naked body, and all those things. There's a lot there packed in. But I would say, without giving anything away, I really love right in the middle, like 6. I'm digging that. The vibe of that. I think that's real fucking cool.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all good.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it just because I worked on it. I mean, like, they're good. But that one is like, I really like that one.
We're excited. We're excited for people to get there.
Oh yeah.
It's pretty rare that you get to like do cool stuff like this, you know, like something that highlights and showcases what we do. Great acting, great script. It's like a perfect storm,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and being Batman and being a comic, you know, it's just like shit was made for me, man. You know, I'm like totally hardcore into it.
Before we wrap up, I do want to talk a little bit about Sebastian Stan and A Different Man and just recreating that face for that man. And I'm guessing he's very similar, like to Colin, and being so dedicated to working in those conditions. What were the biggest challenges for that movie?
You know, Sebastian's also incredible at this, and I think that he never really wore makeup before. So, you know, maybe his curiosity, you know, led himself to being tortured by me, you know. So, but again, a saint in the makeup and never complained and was so into it and so dedicated. So that makeup, that movie, if you haven't seen it yet, and for your viewers, that movie is a very special film. Even though it is a comedy and it doesn't take itself too seriously, it's like a Charlie Kaufman / Cronenberg kind of surreal film. And I love that kind of filmmaking. And Aaron Schimberg, amazing director, total indie guy, like from New York, and you know, just kind of he's an artist, you know, really New York artist, you know, and that movie speaks a lot to me as well because its whole theme is perception of beauty, and again, so much similar to The Penguin. How do you develop as a person when you have physical limitations or a appearance that people might be either scared of or not know what it is or who you are and all that, and they judge you immediately upon looking at you. So that movie like erases the stigma of how you look, you know, because the character Edward looks how Adam looks. In a way, they're not mirror images, but they're very, very similar, very close. And there is a chance that Edward, who is played by Sebastian, goes through an experimental process to become normal, technically. There's a way for him to lose his facial, affliction identity and to become somewhat normal. And as he does that, he realizes he doesn't want to be that way anymore. And he wants to go back to what he looked like before because he meets Oswald, which is a very interesting name. It was very similar to the Penguin, same name. He meets Oswald, played by Adam Pearson, who is having the greatest life looking the way he is. And people love him, and all the women love him, and the world loves him, and he's an incredible person. And Edward, Sebastian, is like, fuck, I want to go back to being what I used to look like because they love him and I want to be loved and all of this stuff. So it's basically like, a thing to where perception of the way your physical appearance is, it twists it. It just turns it on its head. So I'll leave it up to the people to watch the movie, but like, it's so interesting of a thing where, it's a different take on things, and it's done in a very comedic, funny, awesome way. And Adam Pearson is incredible in that film. His acts in the film, halfway in, he's in the movie, and it's like, man, he's fucking awesome, and he's so cool, and he's so charming. And I spent a few hours with him last night. Man, that is just like the coolest dude. He is so charming, so elegant, and so funny, and just, I don't know. I hope people see the film, and I hope people understand what it's saying. It is a much deeper meaning, and I hope people like the film. And Sebastian really was patient, and we did a lot of makeup effects in the movie. There's a lot of different things about this crazy stuff that happens. You'd be like, oh shit, this is really wild, total Cronenberg stuff, it's just a fun film.
We love that. Mike, we are so grateful for your time again. You are always a delight to speak to. You're a fucking rock star, man. So hopefully we'll get to talk to you again soon, and we just cannot wait for everybody to see where the Penguin goes from here. So again, thank you, and we'll hope to talk to you soon, man.
You got it anytime, guys. Thanks for having me.